Welcome in to this week's episode of The Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher. We are here to break down all things college basketball. We are a day late recording from our normal slot. We usually have a Thursday show. Today we are recording on Friday. We'll have this posted ahead of course, Final Four weekend, which gets started tomorrow, Saturday night. We will have two Final Four matchups. Of course, Auburn and Florida advance on one side of the bracket. On the other side, we have Duke and Houston. So all four one seeds advance. We will talk about that here in the first segment. We're going to break down what we saw last weekend in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, walk through some of what I encountered in the South region as well as the rest of the bracket. Then in the second segment, we will get you ready. We will preview the Final Four, both matchups, and pick a national champion heading into this weekend. Of course, did originally have planned on Tuesday to also record a show to put out a coaching carousel special. The coaching carousel still is spinning right now. We have some movement, so we will talk about a little bit of the latest to go on in the third segment and get you out of here. We will still be doing a full breakdown of the coaching carousel, likely sometime in the next couple of weeks. Next Thursday, probably the most likely time, given the way things look right now. Probably will have the coaching carousel stop spinning by then. Of course, it got cut short from happening on Tuesday, not just because of the latest movement, but also because you can probably still hear it in my voice. I have been pretty under the weather the last few days, basically since I got back from Atlanta. So have been dealing with that, have been trying to push to get well enough just to record this. So we are here on Friday, finally feeling well enough, finally with enough of a voice, enough stamina here to talk for a little while. So before we run out of time, let's go ahead and get into it. Here in the first segment, I want to walk through the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, how we got to this point, how we reached four number one seeds making it to the Final Four, which of course I did predict at the start of all of this. We will start in the South region where I was live, where I had coverage. Auburn taking on Michigan. Auburn able to pull away from the Wolverines there. They get the win. Janai Broome steps up, has a big performance against those Michigan bigs, which gave them some trouble. They did provide an interesting matchup, did challenge Auburn, at least for stretches of that game, but it did feel like Auburn was ultimately going to pull away in that one. They were able to do so, and so they roll into the Elite Eight looking like the team that we were expecting. And this is something that we talked about at the very start of the tournament again, was if Auburn could survive that second game against Creighton, you could start to feel a little bit better that they are on track, that they are the team that we have seen throughout the entire season and not the one that we saw on a skid over the past couple of weeks. That proved to be the case. They go out, they beat Michigan. Then on the bottom of the bracket, we had Ole Miss, who advanced past Iowa State, facing off against Michigan State. And it did look like early the Ole Miss athletes gave some trouble to Michigan State, but Michigan State just felt like the better team overall for most of that game. It played out that way. They were able to rally. They were able to draw things close. Chase Richardson had a really good performance. And this Michigan State team, full credit to them, because there has not been just some outstanding, if you look at the other teams here across most of the bracket, we look at Auburn and we talk about Janai Broome. We talk about Cooper Flagg at Duke. We talk about Walter Clayton at Florida. Houston, a little bit more in that same vein of without a go-to one guy who gets it done, but Milos Uzan has sort of become that over the past couple of weeks. LJ Cryer, you could put into that conversation as well. Alabama has Mark Sears, as we know. Texas Tech has JT Toppin, who they go to. Darian Williams can also step into that role. With this Michigan State team, it is Jace Richardson, but Jace Richardson is not a guy who's been averaging 20-plus points per game all season. He's a guy who stepped up from being in a bench role to now in the starting lineup and was getting into the low teens a lot of times late through the year. So there's a lot to like about this Michigan State team in their balance, in their ability to just get the job done as a team unit. Something that Tom Izzo has taken great pride in being able to do. So they pick up the win there against Ole Miss. They're able to squeeze that one out, and it sets up Auburn against Michigan State. Tom Izzo was not afraid to speak his mind. He was not afraid to talk about Final Fours. He's a guy who, at this point in his coaching career, might be the only person in college basketball who can get away with this, where after advancing to the Elite Eight, he is talking about the Final Four and nobody blames him. I don't think that anyone holds it against him. Nobody calls it a jinx. Nobody is concerned that he's looking ahead. They just understand that he has accomplished so much in his career that that is where his focus lies, is the big achievements that he wants, the banners, as he says, that he gets to hang up in that arena. But it is Auburn who comes away with that victory. Just felt like from start to finish, as I said, Michigan State had some trouble with Ole Miss athletes. Auburn is another step up in that level of competition. Auburn had control there. It felt a little bit similar to that Michigan game. You know, this Auburn team just was going to drag it out, just was going to have enough. And without a big Jace Richardson performance, as I said, they just were not able to keep up. Janai Broome, of course, went down with an elbow, an arm injury, something in that range, after being going to the floor awkwardly. He appears ready to play this weekend. We will see if he's at 100%, but he was able to return to that game even without using the arm very much. He was effective. Of course, he shoots left-handed, so it does not necessarily impact every aspect of his game if that right arm is not at 100%. If he can get it to 80, 85%, could end up having just as big of a performance. So, Auburn through to the Final Four. As we said, this is a team that is now back to rolling. This is the team that we saw all season. So who do they see on the bottom of the bracket? Well, Florida played Maryland in the Sweet 16. They advance. They get another test early, it felt like, and then they pull away. And once they pulled away in that game, it became very clear that Florida, yes, does in fact have the best starting unit. Their ability to go out there and use just those depth pieces, all of it comes together. This Florida team is so complete. They are not lacking in any one area. They can beat you in a whole lot of different ways. They have a lot of players who can beat you in different ways. So they get that Maryland win. Of course, that sets up some coaching carousel drama that we will get to in the final segment. But then on the bottom of the bracket, we had Texas Tech and Arkansas. Some controversy in this one where we come down to the wire. It feels like Arkansas has a chance to get the game winner. Instead, John Calipari does not call a timeout. And here's what I want to say about the combination of two different things. We've got the foul up three conversation, which has been sparked here, and we've got the call a timeout to set up a play conversation. So two different conversations here. Number one, and this is two general conversations, with the discussion surrounding whether you should foul up three. I think it's important to note that it is not just about fouling up three. It is about the amount of time that is left on the clock when you choose to foul up three. So there is no reason to foul up three with 10 seconds left in the game. That does not do any good to you. Because what then happens is you foul up three. They make both free throws. They cut it back to a 1-point game. Now they foul you with probably 8 seconds to go. Well, now you go down to the other end and you have to make at least as many free throws as they made to just keep it at a 3-point game. And then we reset again and have to do it all over. So you are actually adding a lot of risk to the equation that you could actually end up losing this game by fouling up three before you reach the 5-second mark. Now, once you get to 5 seconds, especially in college basketball where you cannot advance the ball with a timeout, what you start to do is inside of 5 seconds, say it's 4 seconds left on the clock, you commit the foul. Obviously, you have to avoid doing it while they are in a shooting motion, but you foul them with 4 seconds left. Now they go to the line. If they make both of those, you are now going to inbound the ball. Probably a second comes off the clock. So now 3 seconds remain in the game. You head down to the other end. Yes, you still have to make both shots to eliminate the chance that you lose this game. But they now have just 3 seconds to run down the floor. Now, ideally, you want to get it inside of that 4 second window because now you start to talk about really, really tight margins. But what teams are now combating this strategy with, understanding this, is they're shooting a little bit earlier in the clock. They might shoot it with 6 seconds left, with 7 seconds left, because they know that you're going to foul them if you get inside of 5. And so you can actually get a higher quality look by waiting just before they want to foul you because you know they are going to actively avoid that foul. Now you can get a little bit cleaner of a shot, even if it's from deeper beyond the arc. So that's the foul up 3 conversation. That's what you need to know when you start talking about whether a team should foul up 3, why they didn't in certain situations, what was the time on the clock, and what did the offense attempt to do to combat that new strategy. Because it has been around long enough that now everyone is aware fully of when and how they want to do it on both ends. Now, we get into the timeout to set up a play conversation. I fully understand and I get why, again, especially in college basketball where you cannot advance the ball up the court, why you would want to allow them to grab the ball off the rim and run down the court to set up the game-winning play. You have concepts that you've been working on the entire season. You have players who you trust to get into certain spots. You have actions that you know are your defaults in this moment. You've probably talked to your guards on the sideline about what you're running anyways during the past free throws. So, Arkansas gets the ball. They come down the court. And I have no problem with John Calipari not calling timeout. We've seen plenty of coaches let things play out. But that was with, 7, 8 seconds left? Now they get down the court. The first action of the set goes horribly wrong. Nobody gets open. They end up bringing multiple defenders to the ball. They have to turn out of that. Now you're running away from the action. You're going into more of an ISO set here on the side. And the clock is ticking down inside of 5 seconds. Now, this is where I believe John Calipari should have called timeout. The play did not work. You still have plenty of time to get off a play, and because of where the ball is, you get to run that play from the front court. You do not have to advance it up the floor. If you call timeout, you will get a side inbounds play, and you will be able to set up and draw something with plenty of time to get whatever action you want. You can run multiple actions. You can get the ball in and dribble it multiple times to set up whatever it is you want to get. Whether that's a 3, a 2, to any player on the floor. You have time to get that done. Instead, what we see is the ball handler now is trying to create something in ISO. He does not get past his defender. So with 3 seconds left, what he does is he turns his back to the basket. And at this point, I cannot understand why John Calipari does not call timeout. Because if your ball handler is in an ISO situation with his back to the basket, somewhere between 16 and 20 feet from the rim, against a defender who is bigger and longer than him, you have almost zero chance of even getting the shot to the rim. And so with 3 seconds left, call the timeout, and you can set up a quick action. Again, you still have time to, from a side inbounds play, get something done. Can it be as elaborate as a 5-second play? Not quite, but you can still get a lot done in 3 seconds. Go watch. I guarantee you, there are so many buzzer beaters that you can find online. Highlights of plays drawn up with less than 3 seconds on the clock, where they run a play, get a guy open, get a clean shot, win the game, or at least have a chance to win the game. Instead, you've got a guard against a bigger defender attempting a step back from a position where his back is to the basket. Now, a step back shot is not a bad shot, especially if you have a good player on the ball, which they did. But a step back shot from back to the basket against a longer defender will never create the space needed, ever. It's just not going to get you the open look. You have got to be able to push the defender back with your forward momentum to then step into open space. The defender has no reason to believe you're moving forward if your back is to him. So he knows which direction you're going. He can close out harder, more aggressively, and without the risk of fouling in that situation. So Arkansas ends up missing. Texas Tech advances. And then Florida gets a real challenge. They struggled for large stretches against Texas Tech. Of course, Walter Clayton turns it on big time. We see a huge performance from Thomas Houck. And it was just more evidence to me. And I'm not sure how people feel about this. We will talk about it here, but they survived that game. And I have two combating thoughts. One is they have not looked invincible. They have not looked perfect here through this tournament. Of course, we know they were challenged by UConn. Maryland early, gave them at least some things to think about. They of course pulled away and looked pretty comfortable in that one, but I don't think that they were just dominant from the very start to the very end. And then Texas Tech gives them a real scare where you thought for large stretches they were not going to be advancing. So does that show that they are weaker than we thought? That they have more vulnerabilities than we thought? Does that show that in Auburn, that is now playing extremely well, can they just run them off the floor here? Or does it show that, hey, they don't have to have their best. They don't have to have the Grand Slam effort. They can go grind it out. They can find somebody off that bench who's going to get enough done to keep them in this game. They are just going to stick around and pester you and find a way to win. And I can't fully figure out which one it's going to be. We will get an answer to that, I think, on Saturday. Because this is where it gets really interesting. You're going to see 1 seed Auburn, 1 seed Florida. This is to determine which SEC team will represent that conference in the national championship game. So we'll talk about that matchup in the next segment. But first, we have to head to the other side of this bracket where Duke took down Arizona. Pretty convincing one. Don't think we really have to have a ton of conversation. I thought that the Caleb Love storyline was a good one as we came into it. Thought that Arizona could challenge them just a little bit more, but Duke was able to pull away, able to look really good down the stretch in that game. Alabama and BYU was an offensive, just juggernaut performance. Insane what they were able to do. Alabama goes out and shoots over 53 pointers. They knock down almost 50% of them. I mean, it was one of those performances where you're just not going to beat a team that shoots like that. I mean, BYU did not play a poor game, but when the other team is just knocking down every shot that they take and they're taking so many from beyond the three-point line, you just can't catch up. Alabama got red hot at the perfect time, and they advanced there in one of the best offensive performances that we've seen all season and honestly in quite some time across college basketball. So it sets up Duke and Alabama, which was a fascinating matchup. It was a matchup where, of course, with Auburn and Florida, we know eventually making it to the Final Four on the other side. There's now a conversation with Tennessee on the bottom of this bracket as well. We'll get to in a second, where we're talking about the potential for all 4 Final Four teams to actually come from the SEC. Can they make it happen? Can they get it done? Well, Alabama goes out there and they play against this Duke team, which I think made their best case yet as a national champion contender. I understand that a lot of the odds have had them there for quite some time, but it felt like whichever of these 2 SEC teams on the left side just had the upper hand just a bit because Duke had not faced necessarily the same gauntlet that they had throughout the course of the season. They were not as battle tested. but man, they have looked good every step of the way. I mean, they are putting teams away and really not leaving much doubt. Duke has, more so than anyone, I think, in this tournament, avoided a real push from their opponent. They kind of kept Alabama at arm's length here, the same way that they did Arizona. They just did not let them get into that game fully. They've got so many future NBA talents on this roster. It's not just the freshmen. You look at Tyrese Proctor, he's going to be in the NBA. Sion James, I believe, will play in the NBA. Guys like Malik Brown could form a pathway for them to get into the NBA. So, I mean, this is a deep, deep group of future pros. So, look, Duke to the Final Four, and they play the winner here from the Midwest region, where Houston took care of Purdue in the Sweet 16. Purdue, who had pretty much home court advantage in this one, playing in Indianapolis. Houston, though, was able to make the shots to get the crowd out of it just enough to advance in this one, to pull away. It was, I think, a little an interesting challenge. I'll say that, because I said going into the tournament, I thought that the Gonzaga game might be their toughest challenge, and it proved to be a challenge. They had to survive against that Gonzaga team. But then they get to this Purdue game, and you add in this crowd noise situation, being in Indianapolis, an essentially true road game that you're playing as the 1 seed in the Sweet 16, something that not many people have to experience. Auburn, in fact, experienced the opposite, pretty much a home environment there in Atlanta. So they have to go in and face that. They survive. They pass the test. Milos Uzan, again, he continues to step up his game. This is a different player than what we saw early in the season. He has become the type of go-to guy who you can put the ball in his hands and you trust that he's going to make these decisions, that he is going to get this team where it needs to be, whether that's the guards, setting up the bigs for success. This Houston team is clicking on all cylinders, of course, after advancing through that round. Then we got Kentucky and Tennessee, and I leaned Kentucky in this one. I actually thought that Kentucky might have the upper hand here. Does not play out that way. We end up getting Tennessee. The defense was just smothering. Kentucky just could not find the answers on the night. An interesting one there where this Tennessee defense really clamped down. You saw it. They got enough offensively from their guards. They ended up getting, from this tournament, I think Jonas Adu was, at Arkansas, Felix Okpara, now at Tennessee. He showed some flashes there where you thought, okay, well, they've got a big man who can kind of help them in some of these moments. But it does all come down to the guards when we talk about Tennessee. Of course, Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, and Jemai Meshack. They had a good game against Kentucky, were able to keep their guards in check. That Kentucky team, of course, not at full force of what they were at points throughout the season, but Tennessee able to advance through to face Houston. And that was when we got an absolute beatdown in the Elite Eight. Houston jumped on Tennessee early, and they never really let their foot off the gas. Watching that one in the media room with some different people from across the country, everyone was just wondering, when is Tennessee going to make a shot? I mean, they missed and they missed and they missed. They kept missing three-pointers. They took so many early on. Chaz Lanier is in such a slump. He's 1 for 9 to start the game, and you're wondering, like, forget if they're going to come back and win this game. Are they going to make it respectable? They were about down 20 points, early in the first half. And they were able to kind of even out the storm there. They didn't lose by, the 40, 50, whatever that it could have been. But Houston did not ever feel in question in that game. It felt like Houston was pretty much open shut. They were done with that game once they came out there and set the tone. Did not have to exert a ton of effort to get it done beyond that point because they had already separated themselves from the Volunteers. So that sets up our Final Four. We've got Auburn and Florida on one side, Duke and Houston on the other. When we come back on the other side, we will break down the Final Four for you and predict a national champion right here on Three True Values. Welcome back in 2 3 True Values as we keep rolling on the show. Here in the second segment, we're going to break down this final four for you. We're going to talk about the two matchups that we have set. We have Auburn and Florida on one side, Duke and Houston on the other. So, a lot of great storylines here. Of course, we have on this left side, we have Auburn and Florida facing off. One will represent the SEC in the national championship. We know that the SEC has had a historic season from the non-conference schedule to start the year, the record that they put up, just blowing out what anyone thought they could have done, to their performances in all of the polls in bracketology, how many teams they land in the NCAA tournament field. That's a record. Number of wins in the NCAA tournament. They are setting records. Teams advancing round by round. We're seeing them set records. And now here we are with the Final Four. One team will represent the conference in the national championship game. So that is a huge honor for either of these teams to take on. And they can become the team that finally puts all of it to bed. Just start to finish, this SEC would have the best case as a dominant, the basketball conference of the year 2025, the season 24-25. You can't question it. If they win the national championship, now they've got everything under their belt. So which team will represent them in that? That is, of course, the big kind of storyline there. But you've also got a student versus teacher rivalry here. We have got Bruce Pearl facing off against Todd Golden, who worked for him at Auburn, was an assistant on his staff. Todd Golden, of course, then went on to eventually become the head coach at San Francisco and then gets the head coaching job at Florida. So this is a guy who Bruce Pearl talks about like he is another son to him, that he is somebody who he has great respect for, who he has worked with, who he has mentored throughout his career. And now they face off in the Final Four for a right to go to the national championship game. This is a huge moment for both of them, whether it's Bruce Pearl kind of putting his foot down of this is my coaching tree and I own this, or Todd Golden saying, hold on now, there is a new era. This is my coaching tree. I am starting something here. So there's a lot lying underneath in this game. It's going to be very fascinating to watch play out. You've also, of course, got a matchup which Auburn wins the SEC regular season title and Florida wins the SEC conference title. So you want more SEC storylines. There you go. There's one right there. But we're not done yet. There's another storyline to watch for in this one. And that is that these two teams only have one head-to-head matchup so far this season. In that game, Florida went on the road to Auburn and took care of business against the Tigers during a point in the season where they looked unstoppable. So Florida has had the upper hand on this team before in more hostile environment, with the odds probably stacked a little bit more against them. Will Auburn respond? Will they get the revenge here, or will Florida show that they have a matchup advantage in this one? That is all, of course, to be determined. But as we talk about the breakdown of the game, as we talk about what goes into it, of course, Johni Broom's health is going to be number one. That is the thing that we have to get figured out, because if he is not at 100% health, now, I said in the last segment, if he can get that right arm, because it's not his shooting arm, if he can get it to 80, 85%, he can still go out there and do a lot. And that is true. But against a team like Florida that can run so many bigs at him, I think it will be important for him to get as close to 100% as he can. Because I do think that, Florida exposed some things in that matchup earlier this season that Auburn had to kind of look in the mirror after seeing them in that matchup. I think that Florida has got the depth here. I think that Florida has that guard it factor that we see matter so often. The perimeter, sometimes you're going to have to go to the perimeter. I think Walter Clayton gives you the advantage there. I know Auburn's going to run multiple defenders at him. That will be fun to watch. We're going to see that kind of chess game that's played. Who's guarding who at different points throughout the game. I'm interested to see what Elijah Martin can put up. He has not been uh, the most consistent player on the floor, but we know that he can put up these big performances. He's been in big moments before, also at FAU. So, what does Florida get? Can Thomas Houck come in and have a big performance? Is it one of the centers who has a big game? Alex Condon, looking at him, could he have something big? I think that Auburn has done a lot with this two big lineup that they like to run, with two of the three out there of Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell, and Chaney Johnson. Florida is uniquely positioned to counter that with Chinyelu, with Condon, with Henlogton. I think that they can combat it. And so when you throw in all of those factors, I do just lean Florida still. And this is where interesting, because I picked all four of these teams to go through to the Final Four, and so now we get into a situation where I have to make a decision if I'm going to change my original bracket or if I'm going to stick with what I've had this whole time. And I said that this Florida path has given me two different thoughts. Are they just surviving no matter what, or are they showing some real weaknesses that could come back to bite them against Auburn? I think both. And so, in the absence of a strong feeling either way, I'm going to stick with what I have believed, and that is that Florida has something. They've got just something here that will give them the edge against Auburn. I think with the Janai Broome stuff added into that, I will lean Florida to advance to the national championship game. On the other side of the bracket, we have Duke against Houston. And there's plenty of great storylines here as well. We have on this side, with Duke, a new era. It's Jon Scheyer's Duke team. Coach K, obviously synonymous with that program, built it into what it is today, and then handed it off to his handpicked successor, Jon Scheyer, who has taken over the reins and really not missed a beat so far. He has kept the recruiting trail going, just recruiting class after recruiting class, number one, number two, whatever it is. He has brought in the best players. He has now meshed that pretty well with some transfer portal additions. He has shown a little bit of a new roster building philosophy in terms of what he wants to surround the best players with. Those role players that he's able to bring in, the veterans, the lengthy guys that he's put around this roster. And it has paid off in a big way. This is a big, strong, athletic, lanky team that also has this star power on it. And so, can Jon Scheyer get his first championship run at Duke? Can Cooper Flagg cement his college basketball legacy with a run to the national championship game? We know he's going to be the number one overall pick. We know that he's going on to an NBA career where he is projected, at least, to do great things, to be a great NBA player that all teams will covet. Teams already tanking for him now in the NBA. But can he cement that college basketball legacy? Can he get that championship to look back on in his long list of building accolades? Or on the bottom of this bracket, can Houston prove that defense wins championships? Can Kelvin Sampson complete the ultimate career arc story here? Tossed aside from college basketball, comes back to a Houston program, which was not in the best of shape, built them into such a big program that they eventually get an invite to a Power 5 conference, then take over that Power 5 conference. After running the AAC, he immediately starts just dominating in the Big 12, just takes that mantle straight away from Kansas. Kansas, the blue blood under Bill Self, just moved aside for Kelvin Sampson's Houston team. Can he complete that run of dominance, that return to the top of the sport, that unique way of doing things, the style that he has implemented there? Can he cap that with a national championship run? That group of players, many of them started at Houston. Now, there are a couple of transfers on the roster, yes, but many of them have been at Houston for multiple years, something that you don't always see that often in college sports anymore. And then you look at it just from the inverse of what we said on the other side. Duke and Houston, the two teams left who can stop the SEC from claiming this basketball season as a complete and total success. If either of these teams can win the championship, now we're talking about this team being so good that they took down the SEC during its best season. So there are so many storylines here in this Final Four. Such good matchups as well. This one, we've got a little bit of offense versus defense. We've got this Duke team, which has been just cruising past opponents against this Houston team that wants to grind you down, play in the mud a little bit. They want to play this game in the 60s. I don't think that Duke is going to be able to be dragged down into the 60s, though. I do give Duke the edge here because they've got the big, long, strong athletes. They've got them all over the court. It's one thing to push around guys, but you don't usually push around guys who are as big and as strong as you are. Duke has plenty of those players. I think that they will be able to get the job done there. Because of that, I'm leaning Duke in this matchup, which would then, of course, set up Florida versus Duke. That would be our national championship game if things go this way. And I'm confident in Duke advancing on the other side. As I said, I think that Florida and Auburn could go a little bit more either way. I do think that I will pick Florida. Still, I'm going to stick with Florida as the national champion here. I do like just the depth there. I think that they've got enough size to match up. Maybe at the guard positions, they're a little bit smaller, but I think the guards might be a little bit more talented in terms of their ability to go out there and perform. Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin will not back down from anyone out there, regardless of who Duke throws on them. I think that this is what it comes down to. Duke has the best player. Florida has the more complete basketball team. So I will just lean towards Florida to get this one done. But we are set up for such good matchups. Everything that we have on deck here is a great basketball game. I know that we've talked about the Cinderellas, the lack of them advancing deep in this tournament. Some people have said that it's the death of college basketball, which does not make any sense. But this is what we get. This is the second time in history that we've had 4 number 1 seeds advance to the Final Four. The last time that it happened, we had overtime. We had buzzer beaters. We had great games. Now, I can't guarantee that in these matchups, but I can guarantee you that this will be high-level basketball. You are going to see dozens of future NBA players in these matchups. You are going to see some of the best coaches in college basketball. You are going to see programs that are going to be back here. This Final Four has it all. This is everything you want. When we start the season, you want the best teams playing each other at the end. That's what we have here. We have the 4 best teams in college basketball. They separated themselves throughout the season. I've said it over and over again. Somewhere between 4 to 6 teams separated themselves from the rest of the pack. All right, look, Alabama made it to the Elite 8 and then got eliminated by one of the clear top 4. Tennessee made it to the Elite 8 and got eliminated. All right, this is what we asked for. We asked for the best teams at the end. We got 7 of the best 8 teams throughout the entire course of the season, all made it to the Elite 8. And then from there, we got the best 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 all made it. So this is the moment. This is what college basketball can really benefit from, is this big moment with great matchups. So be sure to tune in. Saturday will be, of course, the Final Four games, and then Monday will be the national championship. We will come back on Tuesday and recap it all for you right here on 3 True Values. But first, we have, in our final segment, some coaching notes from around the country. Welcome back in here, the final segment of 3 True Values. Just a few coaching notes for you because we were not able to record because I was quite under the weather this week. A coaching carousel special on Tuesday. End up working out. We still have some moving pieces bouncing around. We'll get to that here in a second. So, the current plan will be to do that next Thursday. Uh, I will have a hard answer on what next Thursday's show will be on Tuesday. Tuesday, we will go ahead and discuss the national champion and probably go ahead and start talking way too early top 25 as well. We'll go ahead and put a bow on this season and already get things rolling. Looking forward to what next season could be. But next Thursday will either be the coaching carousel special if we look like we've got things wrapped up there, at least with the high major jobs. If not, we might go ahead and look at an NBA draft special, looking ahead at mock drafts, what they look like, how they have changed since March Madness. So that all will be unveiled on Tuesday. We will have a full slate of what is on deck, as well as some more of what's to come this off season. Yes, we will continue to record throughout the off season. As I've said over the past couple of weeks, we will keep you up to date. Coaching changes, transfer portal, NBA draft coverage. We'll have it all here for you on Three True Values. So you're going to want to stay tuned. Recording should be every Thursday. We might throw in a Tuesday show every now and then as well. So this is not the end. This is just the beginning. We are going to continue to talk all things college basketball right here on Three True Values. But before we head out today, we've got a couple of coaching storylines to talk about. Kevin Willard makes that move from Maryland to Villanova after his team is eliminated from the NCAA tournament. That was obviously big news, set off the Maryland fan base quite a bit. They were not happy with that move, which might be a little bit lateral. It's a fascinating one to me. Clearly, he was frustrated with the perceived buy-in that he was getting, the resources he felt like he needed. He clearly did not think he was going to be able to get out of them. You then have a little bit of a spat with the athletic director, who then leaves. Then you leave after the athletic director takes off. So just a lot to unpack there, a lot going on in that Maryland program. But Kevin Willard ends up at Villanova. I think it was a really solid hire for them. A guy who returns to the Big East. He knows that conference well. It further stocks the excellent group of coaches that they have there in the Big East. Of course, Richard Pitino added to that group this offseason as well. And the great group of coaches that was already in that area. But that opens the Maryland job. And we had already gotten some tips that Buzz Williams was going to put his name in there. And once Buzz Williams puts his name in for the Maryland job, that was always going to happen. Like I know that some Maryland fans wanted a Maryland through and through kind of guy. Buzz Williams is not that. But Buzz Williams is a real program builder. He's a guy who's going to develop relationships with the players. He's going to develop relationships with the people around him. Like he is a very unique person. He's one of my favorite coaches to cover that I have gotten to be around pretty consistently. From my time as a student reporter, he was pretty new at Texas A&M through multiple trips to SEC Media Day. I have seen him at the NCAA tournament before. Just every stop that I have seen Buzz Williams, I feel like he puts in real effort to answer questions. And he cares about his players in a way that I have not seen many coaches truly do so. And it's not just coach speak up there saying that he cares about the players. All coaches do that. You're not going to fool me by just saying that you care about your players. But it's the actual investment. It's the tangible things that he's saying. It's the emotion of the players while he's saying it. The emotion of his family in the seats behind the cameras. So while I know that sometimes he rubs some people the wrong way by bouncing from a job to job after 6 years, that's just the way he does it. That is a coaching philosophy move that he has implemented in his career. And I can't speak 100% to Buzz Williams. Only he could fully explain the 6-year cycle. But the way that it has been described to me is that Buzz Williams, first off, he views the world differently. He's the type of guy who's just interested in knowledge. He wants to learn everything about everything. He has a lot of interests. And so when he's studying what he's going to do in his career, he's not just looking at basketball and coaches and schemes. He's looking at the grand picture. He's looking at how it relates to other things. And so he has found, from what I've been told, the coaches who stay somewhere for 6 years are held to a different standard. After 6 years, the standard sort of resets. It doesn't matter what you walked into, how much you've overachieved over the past 6 years. Because he has overachieved at just about everywhere he's been. Marquette, Virginia Tech, Texas A&M. There is a new standard set. And if you don't live up to what you did the past 6 years, they're either going to fire you or they're going to be upset. But they're not going to be as happy as they were with the first 6 years that you had that success. And he's had great success at all these stops. So why not go somewhere where they are now thrilled that you're there, fully invested, fully bought in, and going to give you 6 years to build whatever you want. And then you do that 4 or 5 times, and now you're ready to retire. It really sounds like a pretty solid strategy. And obviously, if you're a fan base and you're coming up on those 6 years, you start to not like it as much because you know that you're going to lose a coach who's now gotten you this deep into tournament runs. But I don't think that he was dead set leaving Texas A&M. I have, for the past year and a half, said this is the offseason to watch him. He very well could bounce if the right job comes open. Turns out Maryland was the right job for him. If he felt like there was another job that he could take, that he could build how he wanted to build, get the resources he needed, he was going to do it and probably have great success with it. But what you have to consider here is the very complex situation that unfolds when a coach leaves for another job. Because there is frustration from the fan base, there is a commitment to prove him wrong, all kinds of things. So you're going to see that at Maryland. Buzz Williams will probably get more buy-in than Kevin Willard was going to be able to get if he stayed around. That's just the fact of how the psychology works when these coaches change jobs. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly Buzz Williams can build that Maryland team. I think it will be very quick. I think he will build that team right back up into a tournament contender here over the next couple of years. That, though, opens the Texas A&M job. Chris Beard reportedly turns it down. He signs an extension with Ole Miss, gets more NIL investment. Ole Miss was already doing pretty good in the NIL space. They now have even more money to throw around to build that roster to get Chris Beard back into the Sweet 16 if he can build up a good enough unit. So, where does Texas A&M turn? Plenty of rumors out there. Grant McCaslin's name has been thrown around. Chris Jans always in the mix around these types of jobs. We will see how that plays out, hopefully, over the course of the next week, and we will come back right here on 3 True Values and talk more in depth about all of the coaching changes, the grades for each of them, what it means big picture, how we expect them to build their rosters, all kinds of stuff right here on 3 True Values. Thank you for tuning in. Let's watch the Final Four. So much basketball this weekend. We have the Final Four on Saturday and the National Championship on Monday. We'll be back here Tuesday to crown a national champion. Thanks for tuning in.